Hi everyone, welcome back to the BPM Hub. In this video today, we are going to see the create case API in Pega, and I'll try to create this API all through App Studio. This video might be a little bit lengthy, but I have included many details in between, so which are very important for creation of APIs and then maintaining your applications. So please do watch till the end. And also practice in parallel so that you will get a hang of it. Thank you. So let's get started. Okay, so if you haven't gone through the previous video wherein I have created one application PRMS, and then we have added one product, one data type called product, and we have exposed it in the portal, and then we have done CRUD operations. So if you haven't gone through that, I request you to go through that video first so that you will have some continuation over here. So I'll also share the link to the video in the description. You can go through it. So now to achieve the create case API demo today, what is the plan is similar to whatever application we have created earlier in earlier PRMS, which is nothing but product management system. Now I want to create one more parallel application called SUMS. So for the sake of time saving, I have already created that SUMS application. Okay, so it is similar to however we have created PRMS application in our earlier video. You can go through it. And then you can just create with the same steps, but the name would be different, like SUMS. Okay, so what is SUMS is like, the PRMS is nothing but a product management system, right? We have some products here. It is kind of a warehouse kind of application. So now let's say we have added some products as well, right? Let's say one of the product is exhausted. That means we have sold everything or something like that. So now what we have to do is we have to procure them for to take further orders, right? So for that procurement, let's say we have a supply management system, okay, which is nothing but SUMS, wherein a vendor request will be created to procure the item, and the vendor will supply the products back to the PRMS application. So to achieve this, and to make the applications talk with each other, okay, we need some case types, and those case types will talk with each other through API. So that is nothing but create case API, right? So for this API, we are not going to create any API from the scratch, right? Pega has already given us some default APIs, which does most of our work, like creating the case, updating the case, and then view the case at the same time, creating the data, updating the data, and view the data. There are so many APIs by default Pega has already given us. So most of our business flows, our business APIs that needed are covered over here. So if you're not sure what are the APIs that we have, you can always go to the Pega API landing page, right? So here, if you can see, we have assignment related APIs, and then Gen AI assistant, then attachment related APIs, authentication profile, and the case case APIs, and then we have document API, follower APIs, participants related cases, and then tag case type API, page APIs, and then data APIs. Right. So today we'll stick with create case API. So that API is nothing but, if you want to try it out, similar to our Postman or Insomnia. So this will help us to test the APIs as well. So you can always go through this. So for this, we will use this API, which is nothing but create case API. So if you see over here, you can actually try it over here. Try it. So you can also look at the requests that it is expecting, and then and what kind of responses will get. We'll go through it once. But for now, what I want to try is I want to create a case type in PRMS application. Let's call it as procure request, since I'm procuring the products from the vendor. And in the SUMS application, let's create one more case type calling, saying it as vendor request. Okay, so the procure request will initiate the API, and which will create the case in SUMS. The case name would be vendor request. That is what we are trying to do as part of this demo. Okay, so let's get started by adding the create case. Adding the case type, which is in PRMS, which is nothing but procure request. Okay, So in the advanced, I don't, it should be on the PRMS case layer only. Let's create a simple case type. Let's not complicate it much, which it will have one UI wherein it will take the product name, okay, for which we need to procure the items under the product, and then it will send a request to the SEMS application where another case gets created, which is nothing but vendor request, right? Let's keep it simple. Let's not complicate the business flow. Over the period of time, as we explore the other APIs and then the other functionalities of Pega, we'll make this as an unique product, which is nothing but a product management system combined with supply management system, and then we'll have an order management system in future. So yeah, let's get to that. So for that, let's start little. So let's create a case type and then we'll go through the API. So the case has been created. So let's see. Let's add some properties which wherein I can collect the product name and then I can initiate a request. So for that I need to create some of the properties under the data model here. So let's start creating by one field. Let's say it takes product name. Okay. Mm, okay. And then the quantity that needs to be restocked. Okay. So we'll add one more property called quantity. Okay, it should be integer. It should be number, so I'm creating it as an integer. Let's submit these two. Okay, now let's go back to the workflow. In the create case, I'm not putting more. I'll just have one create, and then let's have one more stage called fulfill. Okay, and then we'll add one more stage called resolution. Okay. Okay, so this will resolve the case, right? So I'll just put it as a resolution case, and in the create case, I'll try to take the details from the user on which product should be procured and the quantity, and in the fulfill stage, I'll try to call the API. Okay, and once the API is called and the create case has been created in the SUMS application, the case will get resolved. That's simple application. So in the create API, like I said, I want to add the product name and then the quantity. So now I'll go to the create and then I'll configure the view for it. The view, even for the data type, we have seen the primary fields concept, right? Like if we define some of the fields as primary fields, they will come up here without we adding anything onto the UI or the view. But for now, I don't want to go with the primary fields. Let's go with the fields that we have created. Product name, okay, and then quantity. Okay, so these are the two fields I want to collect from the user, for which we need to create a vendor request in SEMS application, and the vendors will restock and send it to the PRMS application, the warehouse. Okay, this will create as a view in the create screen, right? So let's save this. Now, similarly, we'll create one simple case type in SUMS application. This is the SUMS application I have created. Everything is same. The name itself is different. So you can go through our earlier video and create an SUMS application. And then I'll create one simple case type over here, which is nothing but vendor request. Let's quickly create this. Okay, next. So the application, I mean, the case type has been created. Here also, I'll mention the same, like same properties, the product name and the quantity that I need to procure from the vendor, right? This is in the SUMS application, okay? So this is vendor request. Now I'll add the same names, product name, and then quantity. Quantity would be integer. Okay, submit. Okay, so now that the two properties are created, let's save this. I don't want to add any workflow for now here. This vendor request will be triggered from the procure request that we have created in the PRMS, and the case will get created. So now before we actually create a case, let's try it out, like the API, whether it is working or not. So for that, we can use the Pega API, Pega API to run our request, and then check whether it is working or not. For that, I'll just switch to Dev Studio for a minute. And then I'll initiate the Pega API landing page. So the other point that you need to understand is the Pega API, the default APIs, and the Constellation DX APIs, especially use OAuth 2 as a authentication system. I mean, they use other authentication systems as well, but OAuth 2 would be your primary authentication systems in general that we use for Pega APIs. So for that, like if you don't know about OAuth 2, or how the OAuth 2 works and all, I'll make some other videos in future. But for now, understand as OAuth 2 is something like username and password kind of. Like for a user, you will give a username and password. Like when we are logging into the Pega application, you will give your username and then password, and you will log into it, right? Like for API also, the application will give you the one client credentials and then the client secret. Using them, you can authenticate yourself, and then the API will work for you. So without this OAuth 2 or any secure mechanism, anybody with the URL can create the cases and then use your APIs, right? So security is more important with respect to the APIs. So for that, today what we will do is we'll create one OAuth 2 credentials for SUMS application, so that any application which is having these credentials can trigger the create case API, right? So for that, what we need to do is we'll go to the records and then security. And then what I would do is I will create one client registration. So if you see in the OAuth 2.0 client registration instances, right, Pega already gives us some default OAuth 2.0 client registration. For example, now I have created one PRMS application. The corresponding client credentials and the passwords would be here to access this application through API. Right. Similarly, we have SUMS, which I have created. These gets automatically created. So you can use either these client credentials and passwords to communicate with with this application, SMS application, during using API. But since I want to show you how these client credentials and password looks like, I want to create a fresh one. For the sake of we understanding it, though I don't want to use the default ones, just for the sake of understanding how these client credentials and client passwords are generated. But in general, you can directly go ahead and use these. Right, this is the client ID and the client secret and the other endpoint URLs and everything. So if you don't know much about these things, don't worry. We'll will in few further videos I'll explain how OAuth2 and everything works. But for now, just understand this as for a human, you will give a username and password. For a background job, or for any API kind or robot or automation, you will use this client credentials and client password so that they can authenticate and then use the API services, right? So for now, let's say the client is PRMS, right? So the PRMS application to create vendor request. Let's say the client name is PRMS. So as soon as you create, let's associate this with some application which is SUMS, right? And then so here you can this gets already generated. The client ID and the client secret already gets generated. See, here we have also other grant types like authorization code, client credentials, and then everything. And then you have to map an operator ID here. So why you want to map an operator ID here is, see, the API, you have given the username and password, right? The API logs into your application in the background, but what kind of rules it can use. Okay, so what kind of association, what kind of access you want to give in the application. For that, you can create one um, user with minimum privileges, like just to use your API, and then you can map it over here. For now, I'm giving the admin at the rate of SEMS, but generally, what you will do is you will create one more operator, like an API operator, which will have a minimal access to your application, and whatever is required, we'll give it to that application. We'll give it to that user ID, and then we'll map it over here. For now, I'm giving the admin at the rate of SEMS, and then and then I'll just view and download option is there, right? This view and download also. So we can download the credentials here. This is a one-time activity. Once you save it, the view and download option will get disabled for you, right? So let me save these. Okay, got saved. Now as soon as you save, it got saved, and you won't be able to see the view and download option. Before saving itself, you have to download those client credentials and client password. You will not be able to, you will, decrypt from these things. So yeah, let's have a look at it. Okay, let's have a look at the client ID and client password. So it has created. Just let's see it. So you can see the client ID is this one, the client secret is this one, and the authorization endpoint and the token endpoint and the revocation and the JWKS endpoint and the token introspection endpoint. Everything is here. How and where we will use it, we'll go through it in the next steps. But for now, when you create a OAuth2 data client registration for the first time, before saving itself, you have to review and download the client credentials so that you can give these to your clients. Right now, like I said, here we have one case type, right? Like the PRMS, sorry, the vendor request case type, right? Mm, which will request the vendors to procure those products which which we are requesting, and then they will restock them, right? So for this, I'm trying to initiate the API. I'm trying to initiate the create case API from PRMS application through the restock request app case type. Right. So to do that, we have to do some minimal configuration before. So you have to go to the settings. So the beauty of this case type settings and everything is we have many options over here. And also, while using the API, you always have a confusion to how the request should look like, right? So Pega already gives us the request structure in the case type itself. In the settings, you can get that. We'll see it. So here we have API integration, right? So if you click on the API integration, here Now in the let's click on the API integration since it's first time. Here you see the two options. One is the microservice APIs and the allow fields for create microservice code. So if you click on the generate create case microservice code, this will generate you the request body. So this is how you have to generate your request for the create case API. Let's save this uh, under the credentials for the ease of use, right? And then let's go back to the case type. Okay, so this is the request type that we have to follow, and then this configure the data transform, right? So why we have to use this configure this data transform? Okay, I'll tell you. See, for example, like I said, I want to restock a certain product, right? From PRMS application, I'm collecting the product name and the quantity that I want to procure, right? So now I have to send those details to the vendor request case type saying that you have to procure this product and this much is the quantity, right? So now what you have to do along with the create case API which instructs the SUMS application to create a vendor request case type, I want to map certain fields on the case type as well. So now in the vendor request, I have already created two properties, which are nothing but the product name and the quantity, similar to our PRMS application procure request case type, right? So these two product names, I want to automatically map from the API. So as you can see, allow starting fields, right? In the vendor request case type, how we have gone through is from the API integration. You can, if you can read this label, allow fields for create case microservice code. So what are the fields that are allowed to map through API? You have to define them here. So for that, you have to configure a data transform. So the allow starting fields, currently this is in the work dash. Now I want to save this data transform into the vendor request class. Okay, give me a moment. So BPMS, SUMS work vendor request is my class. So I'll create this here. See, if you can see here, this is the work from workdash it is coming, right? See how they're just defining the properties and they're setting it to the empty value. These are the properties that we can ideally map through API. So for this, I don't want these things. I'll just delete these. Okay, I'll also take off these call super data plus data transform. What I want to map from the API are the product name. Okay, so I'll just add the product name. I'll put empty and then I'll just set the quantity. I'll put empty. Okay, and let me save this. So what it so like I said, what it does is through API, when you're using an API, especially the create case API, if you want to map those properties automatically through API, then you have to add them here. If you don't add them here and you're trying to map through them API, you will get an error saying that content is wrong or something like that. So that's why it is very important to do this step. Okay, since I'll just make this rule set as allow checkout. use checkout and save it. Okay, let's save this as well. Okay, if you refresh it, it should give you checkout option. Okay, now the next thing is we need to try out whether how this API is working. Okay, so before I actually call it from the PRMS, let's try it out whether this API is working or not. So to do that, I'll have to go to the Pega API landing page, right? Which you will find it over here. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Okay, you have to go through the Pega API. Let's try it out. So first of all, to use this Pega API, we need to authorize. We have to authenticate and authorize to the application, right? So now I have created a specific application, which is nothing but our SVMS application. And for authorize, I'm going to use the client ID and client credentials. So not password. Uh, let's go to the client ID and client credentials, which we have already created earlier, right? So let's take them. Let's hide this. Okay. Mm. Okay, this is the client ID. And then the client secret. So in this way, you can test whether your client ID and client credentials are working fine or not, and your create case API request is working or not, before you actually integrate in the applications and then the case type. So you can see the client ID and client secret actually worked, and you can see the logout over here. That means you are successfully authenticated. So now let's go to the create case API. So this is the create case API. So let's try it out. Okay, now since you're already authorized, all you have to do is send the request body. I don't want to send all these things. I'll just try it out whether it is working or not. Okay, so for that, what we will do, we have already copied the request, right, from the case type. We'll just paste it as is. Whether it is creating a case or not, we'll try it. We'll check it. Okay, okay, let's go. Let's paste it. So before I actually execute, let me go back to the app. So this is the instances of my vendor request case. Okay, if you see here, it is vendor request case. I'll open the vendor request case. Okay, these are the instances. I don't have any instances. Now let me execute this. Since it is the first time, it will take some time. So as you can see, we got a 201 response body, which means it is success. And also we have got some, and also we have got some response body as well. So if you see here in the response body, somewhere you will find the case details as well that got created. So it is V1 that got created. So if you go back to the Dev Studio and check it, we have one vendor request V1. Now the basic API is working fine. Now what I told is, I said I have to pass the product name as well as the quantity as well, right? So let's me remodify my request. Okay, whether the content is getting mapped or not, we can check it. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just add product in the content, whatever fields that you want to map, that if you want to send 3 API, you have to add it to the content. Now product name, let's say t-shirt, then quantity. Okay, let's say 20. Okay, now let me put these things. Let me copy this request. Let me put it in the API, earlier API which we tried without sending these fields. Now I'll send these fields. I'll just replace my request with whatever I have created just now. Okay, now let me execute this. Okay, now also I got 201 response. Now let's go back to the dev studio over here, and if you refresh it, we got one more request. Now let me open this. So this v2 got opened. As you can see, it is v2 in SUMS, and then if you check the clipboard, now let me go to the PY work page. And what is the one I've sent? The product name as t-shirt, and the quantity I have sent as 20, I guess, right? So let's go to the Q. Quantity is 20. So now our API is working fine when we are tested through API landing page. Now we need to do the similar kind of exercise, initiating this in from the PRMS application through procure request case. Okay, let's see that now.
PRMS application. So before we actually integrate the API, what we have to do is we have to create one savable data page. Why savable data page? It's the best practice to call the APIs from the databases. And also, since we are creating something, it is better to create a savable data page and configure it from the App Studio to call the API rather than the data. So for that, I'm reusing the underscore product savable data type data page which we have created as part of product data type. Now I'll save as this one and I'll just put that API and then I create this. So it is always it's the best practice to call your APIs from the data pages and especially in the uh, from the savable database. So now, even though I have created this from the Dev Studio, I'll configure this from the to call the API from app. Now I'm just checking with whatever device option that we have got. Okay. Now let's switch back to the App Studio. Okay. Now from the data, let's open the data type. Okay. Now there are two more over here, right? Savable product API that we have just created. Let's open that. Okay. Now go to the savable product API and then click on the settings icon over here and see if you can see configure source and configure save off. Since this is something which we are trying to integrate to create a case, I'll go with the save options. Let's configure the save options. Okay. Now whatever I have, I don't want all these things. I'll just directly take this. Okay. All I want this data page is to call my API, create case API of SUMS vendor request case. Let me add one source. I mean, save plan. And always be always. Then next, okay, create new. Then let me put this up. Create. Okay. And description is create vendor request rest and the endpoint URL is from where we will get the endpoint URL is the details we have earlier. Here, this is the endpoint URL. You will copy this, then paste it over here. Sorry, this is not the endpoint URL. This is your endpoint URL. Okay. This is your endpoint URL. Then content is authentication is my credential, right? Auto.o. Then it is provided by F1. Let's click on effecting icon. Here you have to provide your endpoint URL. This is from imply the string point, access token endpoint, revoke token endpoint. Okay. And credentials and submit. Click on next. And we have to select the grant type, this client credential. Then we have to provide the client identifier and client secret. That also we have from here. Take the client ID, paste it here in the client secret is this one. So also very common here. Redirect URL and the scope are not mandatory fields, so we'll ignore that now. We'll click on the next. Okay. Now we can add a sample, so, which we have from here, right? The sample here. Right. Content, product name, t-shirt, and all everything. But we can click on next. Okay. So now here you can see everything got whatever we have added, everything came up here, and this endpoint URL creates a new setting, application setting. So, and then you can with the dev URL and then the staging URL and the prod URL you can mention. As you can see, it automatically populates the total URL. And then for our profile also, it creates new setting, whatever we have provided. And then if you click on submit, it saves everything that whatever we have done until now.
And open the t underscore product savable. So API database that we have created. So if you see here, the save options as we configured, there has been one connector has been created, save underscore product. And there are some request data transforms and response data transforms are also have been created. Okay, let me open the request data transform. Okay, so this is a request data transform that is automatically created, and then we have a response data transform which is automatically created as well, and then we have one connect rest rule that has been created. So all these are created automatically when we configured this from the API. And also, like I said, the integration system, it created as a create vendor request, and the authentication profile, it created one application setting as well as the URL also. If you see here, it is created one system setting. Now let's see how we can integrate this data page into our procure request case type, and then create a request automatically in the SUMS application for vendor request case type. Okay. So before I actually integrate with the procure request case type, this integration, let's go back and look at the request and response data transforms once again. So we need to modify our request data transform as per our JSON structure that we need to send to SUMS application for the creation of vendor request. So let's go back and look at our request type. So it needs this case type property, and then these two are optional, parent process ID and parent case ID. And in the content, we need to send the product name and quantity. So this JSON structure, this class structure, we need to have. So for that, what I have done is I have created one content property of type page. I'll show you the content property also. So I have created in the int class. Okay, in the class definition I have given as int class, and in that I have created two properties, namely product name and quantity, right? And then what I have done is I have also created the class name property. For now, I have hard coded it to the vendor request. Ideally, we should use DCR, dynamic class referencing. So for the that we will discuss in our next videos. But for now, for the sake of testing, I have a hard coded it as vendor request. Okay. Now these data transform, these are the three steps, the 2, 3, 4 steps I have added. The other things are automatically generated by Pega, and also it generates one map JSON data transform. So this also we have to modify as per our structure. Okay, so the class name, ideally I have mapped it to case type ID, and I have auto mapped the content page as is to the content, right? So this structure will form now if the JSON data transform runs, which this case type ID, which we are sending it through class type, and in content we are sending it as a product name and quantity, right? Now in the response data transform, currently I'm not mapping anything, and I don't want anything to be mapped from the response. So for now, for the testing um, scenario, I've just uh, commented everything in the response data transform, as I don't want anything to be mapped back to the case type for now. So that's why I commented it out. Okay. Now also in the data transform, initially we used to have a lookup here for the source. uh, Savable data page, I don't want to look up anything, right? I just want this save to be run. So what I did is I just changed this. So earlier it used to be lookup, now I changed it to data transform, and I have called one dummy data transform which does nothing. Okay, so it does nothing. So this way our data page configuration, savable data page configuration completes. Now let's go back to the procure request, and then in the fulfill tab, let's create one data transform. For the sake of time, I have already created one data transform. Okay, so initiate VR, which is nothing but vendor request. Here what I'm trying to do is I created one page called product, of type data product, and then I am setting the name and quantity from the PY work page product name and quantity. Like when I run, like I said, the first screen we will collect the product name and quantity, right? Those will be stored in this product name and quantity. I'm setting that page to I'm setting those to these name and quantity under product page, and I'm directly setting this product page to d underscore savable product API, which we have created just now, and the PYGUID. This is since it is a mandatory parameter, I'm just passing. There is no relevance as of now for here, but a savable data page is good to have one mandatory parameter as input parameter. So that's why I'm just setting PYGUID and dot PYGUID. I'm setting it. I'm giving the value to it. Okay, now what I'm and then I have added one more step here, which is called save data page. This is an advanced process, like advanced shape that we have in case types. So there we will have save data page, and under that I have added d underscore savable product API, and then I have passed the parameter PYID. So what happens is once the case is run, initially it will take product name and quantity from the user, then this will run, this data transform will run, and then this data page will get initiated, and whatever product name, quantity, the class name, whatever we have set in the request data transform, they all will be set, and the connect. So let me run it. Before that, let me show you the cases that we have already in the vendor request. So right now you can see we have V1003. So we have 5 cases. Now if I create a procure request in PRMS and run it, then I should get one more case created here. So let me run this. So let me give the product name and quantity. Let's give product name as air cooler. Okay, and quantity, let's say 50 we have to procure. And as soon as I click on submit, in the background the data transform runs in the fulfill section, and the connect rest gets called, and ideally a case should have been created in the SUMS application for vendor request. Now let's refresh and see. Now you can see one more case type, V1004. Let us open and check whether it is the one that we have created or not. So let me open the clipboard. Right now there are no processes in the vendor request. That's why nothing comes up. So all we can check is PO work page. So now, yeah, the product name is air cooler. Quantity should be 50, right? So this way we can integrate the we can do a create case API request in Pega. That's all for today's demo. Thanks for watching.